US spends per cancer patient $53,000 compared to the UK, which costs $12,000 for similar treatments.
The problem is we don't spend the money on the things that we should spend the money on to truly get people better.
Eventually, every country has to decide what is worth to save, the pot of the insurance or the lives of the patient.
I think the answer to that should be pretty easy.
Joining us today is our co-host Dr. Christopher Davis, CMO of Liquivida, who is an interventional cardiologist, and our guest, Dr. Ioannis Papasotiriou,
founder and medical director of RGCC. He's a global leader in personalized cancer diagnostics, using advanced genetic testing to guide targeted treatment.
We can detect cancer at stage 0 by doing something that's called a liquid biopsy. Dr. Davis, when he started doing the RGCC test, he brought it up to me and said, Sam, doing the liquid biopsy, I've been able to really catch things very early.
What I loved about RGCC, not only did they allow us to look for circulating tumor DNA, they had options on how we could potentially treat these cancers as well.
This is the reason why we have focused mainly for screening purposes to see it so that we will pick them up way earlier and in a stage which you can reverse it.
How many products and drugs have you guys actually put through that process and tested?
From the conventional, it's approximately...
Welcome to another episode of a Healthy Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Sam Tejada. And like always, we're bringing experts in health, wellness, beauty, and mindset onto the podcast. So we're bringing experts from all over the world. Today, this guest it originated from Greece. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today is the big C letter word that none of us like to hear, cancer, right? So when we talk about prevention, early detection, and then also treatment intervention, that early detection is very, very important and key. What if I told you that we can detect cancer at stage 0 by doing something that's called a liquid biopsy? What is that? Today, you're going to learn more about it. This is some of the forward-thinking type of things that are out there when it comes to medicine. And guys, sometimes it's not here in the US. Sometimes we got to go outside of the country to be able to get that definitive type of care that we're looking for. Today, who we have here is Dr. Ioannis Papasotiriou. Welcome.
Really a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And part of this, we also have Dr. Christopher Davis as co-host. You guys know Dr. Davis. He's comes on a lot of the different podcasts. He's my business partner, chief medical officer of Liquivida, who's been doing a lot of this testing for cancer called the RGCC cancer test. So Dr. Davis, thank you for being here to tackle this one with me. We're going to get a little bit scientific today with the cancer testing. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Looking forward to having a great conversation.
Absolutely. Doc, so you come all the way here for us to talk about the RGCC. First question I got for you is like, what does RGCC stand for?
Well, RGCC is an acronym, stands for Research Genetic Cancer Center. It's a group of laboratories located in different locations, mainly in Europe, but as well outside of them. And all of them, they work in the field of liquid biopsy, as well as drug development against cancer. So the field is everything around cancer.
Okay. So what made you get into this, into the field of cancer? Like you have to have some kind of story behind that to make you say, you know what, I want to do this, cancer.
Well, everyone has its personal story, so I'm not an exception. So first, a little bit about me. I'm a physician, which primarily I decide to go and specialized in human genetics. But then it was very early, so genetic was almost unknown to the world. So I have then decided to, let's say, specialized in hematology, oncology in German-speaking countries, in Germany practically. Then there you realize the hard reality of oncology. you spend a lot of time with all patients together in a ward or in a station, as we call it in Germany, station. Um, at that time, there were protocols of lasting of 2 years, like the Holter protocol for leukemias, for example. And eventually, you lose many of your patients after a devastating protocol, one after the other treatment
Right.
with all these cases. Then you realize that you have to deal with hundreds, if not thousands, of types of cancer with very few means, with very few tools on diagnosis, even fewer treatment options. That was the time which I realized that it was an unfair fight. So you have to do something. And of course, personal story, you have someone in your family, very close one, which either suffer or you lose them, which makes this need even more strong.
Right.
So then I put all the knowledge and all the technology that I have been familiar with from genetics, and I start working on what actually drives the disease. And this is the beginning of RGCC.
Wow. Wow. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, on my end, the way I found out about RGCC is through Dr. Davis. And, all of us have either friends or family members that we hate getting that news when they get diagnosed with cancer. But the worst part is when you have a family or friend that comes and tells you, "Hey, I've been diagnosed with cancer and it's stage 4." Where you start questioning, well, what happened to stage 1, 2, and 3? So we all know that disease hides very well. And one of the things Dr. Davis, when he started doing the RGCC test, he brought it up to me and said, "Sam, this is incredible. What's happening? I've been able to see some of these doing the liquid biopsy. I've been able to really catch things very early, especially people that are having issues with the toxins in the environment that are producing some of these things." So, Dr. Davis, I want you to kind of talk a little bit about your experience, utilizing
Yeah.
RGCC and when you first started using it, and then let's go in and ask Dr. Ioannis, some questions and figure
Yeah.
out, like
Yeah.
really share this information because I think this is a change in the course of medicine here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, what I tell most of my patients that people don't want to die from three things, the things that they really fear the most. People don't want to have a heart attack and die. Okay? They don't want to have dementia, and they don't want to die from cancer. Okay? And so when I think about being proactive in medicine, those are the three things that I'm always looking at. How do I bring more to my clientele from a preventative perspective? And what ended up happening, I was doing another test out of Germany called IGL, which is no longer available. But IGL was a test that allows us to look at these toxins that were bound to genes, specific chromosomal loci, but it also measures something called circulating free DNA, which I didn't even know what circulating free DNA was. But it turns out that circulating free DNA could be one of the forms of circulating free DNA is something called circulating tumor DNA, which I didn't know anything about that either. But in reading about that further, I understood that, okay, this person's circulating free DNA levels may be high, and I need to figure out if this is related to cancer or not. The story is the guy had a father who had renal cell cancer. And what I found in that test that I was doing was a toxin bound to a gene that encoded for renal cell cancer. So he didn't have a gene for renal cell cancer, but he had a toxin that was bound to that specific gene for renal cell cancer. So I felt like I needed to take the next step. What's the next step in me trying to figure out whether this person had cancer or not? I mean, could he have cancer? And so I started to look out there and I learned about liquid biopsy, and there were several companies out there, and RGCC was one of them. And what I loved about RGCC, and I'm sure we can talk about this later, is not only did they allow us to look for circulating tumor DNA or ctDNA or circulating tumor cells, they had options on how we could potentially treat these or at least address these cancers as well. Meaning they would be able to test specific markers that tell you what type of chemotherapeutic agents to use, what type of natural products to use, and even more so that there were other options. At the time, it was called SOT therapy. Another way that we could uh, uh, address those cancers, so it wasn't just about making the diagnosis. if I found something, what could we do about it? And so that was really how it got started with me. And I actually did their courses to get certified to do the testing. And I can tell you, looking back on this now over the last year or so, it's been incredible. The number of people that we've detected, things like prostate cancer, lots of prostate cancers, that nobody had ever made a diagnosis of prostate cancer, but we saw the circulating tumor cells. And the beautiful part about it is utilizing some of the strategies and some of the natural products, because I'm not an oncologist, I'm a cardiologist, using some of the natural products that they showed me based on the labs and based on incubating the cells with these natural products, they showed me exactly what we should use for these patients. And the circulating tumor cells numbers decreased down. I mean, we have a couple of them now. They've gone down to 0 circulating tumor cells based off of what we learned from their results. And so, just incredible when we talk about being proactive. And I knew this was something you and I talked about the other companies that were out there a number of times, right?
Right.
And I think the difference is it's not just finding it, is what do I do with this, right? And I think this is kind of what he was just saying earlier too, right? The treatment for cancer, for most cancers, even with chemotherapeutics, it's a lot of guesswork that goes into it, and it doesn't have to be the guesswork, right? And so that's where this test kind of comes in, and so, and I've been using it since, and it's been incredible. So, I mean, you want to talk a little bit about your background in the genetics part? I think is interesting because I think the new screening test that you guys have has a lot to do with gene expression with the genes that are typically associated with cancers, right? And with OncoDeclare. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes. Practically, we have to consider that screening is addressed to healthy individuals. So, to all humans, that they are reaching in an age which we know that the chance to develop a malignancy is increasing, or especially when they are in a high risk group. For example, there is a medical background in the family, or they are living in an environment which they are exposed to known toxins which they increase the risk of carcinogenesis. Then the question is that um, how we can identify that risk. So, um, are we going to seek, as you correctly said previously, the circulated tumor DNA? Are we going to see the circulated tumor cells in the periphery? Are we going to search other things that they are going to give us even sooner an insight whether the disease is going to appear? There are major strategies here. So we have to understand that the tumor uh, growth, the appearance of cancer is a process known as carcinogenesis. It takes years
Mm,
to happen.
right.
But before that, um, we have a process which the normal cells are converted, are changing, and they are becoming cancerous. This is what carcinogenesis is. So during that process, the first thing that happens inside the human body is that the immune system starts reacting already. So the first step is the alteration that happens in the immune system of an individual. So this is the first change that we can notice. This is the reason why the OncoDeclare is actually detecting the changes of the immune cells that they are coming in contact with abnormal cells in the process of developing a cancer.
Right.
Then, when the cancer cells appeared, already in a very small size, they disseminate. They detached from the tiny 0.2 millimeter in diameter. So practically, you cannot diagnose with conventional CT, MRIs, etc. And yes, the CTCs exist in very early stage, and there are plenty of studies. One of them is of Dr. Patel, which found that circulated tumor cells exist in bone marrow in stage 1 breast carcinoma. So practically the local disease may not even exist as an entity, as we say in the clinical practice. When the tumor takes a relatively respectful size, then you have parts of the original primary tumor which becomes necrotic, or other parts which they are secreting and other parts which they are simply get to program death, the apoptosis as we know it. The necrotic part of the tumor releases pieces of the DNA. This is the ctDNA, the circulated tumor DNA. The part of the tumor which secretes this part of the DNA, this is the clinical relevant. This is information or pieces of information that you can find from a blood sample, but it comes relatively later than the dissemination. So what comes first then? It's actually the alterations of the immune system. Then you have the presence of the circulated tumor cells, and later on it comes the circulated tumor DNA in the periphery. This is the reason why we have focused mainly for screening purposes to see what kind of alterations actually happens in 92 genes in the to the immune system cells, so that we will pick them up way earlier and in a stage which you can reverse it. Because carcinogenesis only at the last step you have a confirmed cancer cells. Before that, the process can be reversed or even dealt with. Dysplastic or anaplastic cells can either be excised or even get to program cell death as long as you, let's say, change your lifestyle or if you alter the microenvironment. And this is what lifestyle do. So this is what actually we have done. So OncoDeclare is detecting the alterations of the immune system. The OncoTrace actually can detect the presence of circulated tumor cells, and can detect the circulated tumor cells to the periphery. So already we can catch up all the three parameters in every step of carcinogenesis.
Right. Now, Doc, you, you said a very powerful word. You said reverse, which it's something that people are very careful saying that word here in the United States specifically. And I know exactly what you're talking about, right? Now, what I want to touch up on it, because we're talking about the screening that you've developed, you and your team, versus conventional screening for cancer. What is the conventional screening for cancer for the listeners and viewers to understand?
Well, screening in the mean of let's say high risk population is on specific types of or specific organ oriented cancers, for instance colorectal carcinomas or neoplasm of the colon. We say that all people above 45 years old, they should done a colonoscopy,
Right.
preventative. So if we see alterations or findings there, then we do that more frequently until we will detect the disease, hoping that we are going to catch up the disease in early stage 1B, stage 1A, stage 2.
Right.
But still, we need to have the disease. If we do find nothing, then we address to repeat that after 5 years. So if still the findings are negative, then we go to the next 5 years. This is what screening is with a very strict term of the word screening.
Right.
But there are no recommendations during that screening of what you could do if you find a polyp, which is benign. Can you reverse it? Can you do something about it? Or you simply wait so that cancer will appear at the end, and then we start become active after the presence of the disease. So this is something that there is a gray area there. And imagine that sometimes during the interval between two classical screenings, you may not find the cancer in stage 1B or 1A. You may find the cancer in stage 3, already spread to the lymph nodes, or even worse, having a liver met somewhere. So, because carcinogenesis is slow, but as long as you have a malignant cell established, which is the third and final step of carcinogenesis, then the growth becomes exponential.
Right.
See, it's accelerated. So we don't we assume that the process is linear, but in reality, it's by far not linear.
And that's at that point is where it becomes very difficult to reverse.
Correct.
Right. Right.
And I think you also miss the opportunity to emphasize to the person all of the things that they could do. I think the beauty of the OncoDeclare, which is the screening test, is that there are lots of things that you can do from a lifestyle perspective, meaning your nutrition, eating organic, assessing toxins. I mean, all of the things that we need to do to potentially, and I'm going to reverse because essentially you don't have the carcinogenesis like you're talking about when we use our typical screenings that we use today in the United States, whether they're imaging or other serum biomarkers, at that point you already have cancer, right? What he's talking about is the ability to detect that immune system, those changes that occur, and that we can still do something about those changes way earlier if we know that they're there. And so I think that it gives us some insight and gives us the motive. I mean, and your patient's motivation to, hey, I got to make a change because hey, these my immune system is seeing things that could be consistent with developing cancer. And I think we're all, like I said, afraid of cancer. So having this type of information, I think, is incredibly valuable for those who care about our health to say, hey, look, we need to, it's kind of like a wake-up call to try to address it earlier. So this whole prevention movement, I mean, this is a prime example of how we could be way upstream prior to any type of imaging modality.
Right. Right. Because you hear about the people getting the full body MRIs now, to detect early, but this is just a whole different beast of a screening. When we're talking about screening for cancer. Now, around what age would we recommend someone to actually start going through the screening?
Well, as I said, it depends of multiple parameters from the age first, and especially the environment. Environment means habits, um, working environment, what kind of toxins you are exposed to, what is your occupation. For example, there are professions which we ignore that we came in contact with several chemicals which potentially they could become carcinogenic.
Like what I did for 12 years as a fireman.
Yeah,
Right.
so practically there is no something there's nothing that you could say, oh, there's one rule which fits for everyone.
Right.
By the age we know that from 50 years old and above, and our body decay actually indicates that we should become more proactive on the screening side. So yes, in general, above 50 years old, we should start thinking to put screening on our agenda. But if we have, let's say, additional factors like the environment, the habits, or if we have specific types of cancer in our family, for example, we have in females, we may have a mother or a grandmother who appeared a breast or an ovarian carcinoma in age younger than 40 years old. So probably this means that we may have a risk of hereditary type. So it's better the whole family, the bloodline, to be tested.
Mm, early.
And not only female, this is something that we can also have to think about. For example, everyone's talking about the BRCA gene. Well, BRCA has been discovered for breast carcinoma, but in males can create other types of carcinoma, like pancreatic, for instance.
Mm,
So it doesn't mean that, yeah, it's only for one gender, for one type, that it's for all bloodline of the family.
right.
So the screening has a broader meaning that it should involve other people on the same family. But the hereditary types, thank God, they are the smaller percentage of population. The vast majority are sporadic. So we have to consider that the environment plays the most critical role. So this is where the lifestyle plays the equally important role. As
Right.
long as we can reverse it, these chances are working in our favor instead of promoting the presence of the disease.
Right. And that's kind of like Dr. Davis focusing on metabolic health. When something like that comes out early, you start focusing on the person's
Yeah,
metabolic health,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I think it really is just it allows us to start again. It's a wake up call. I think it allows people to start. We think of cancer as a metabolic disease as well. So obviously, focusing on metabolic health like we do with respect to cardiovascular and diabetes, but the same thing. Cancer can be addressed by focusing on the metabolic parameters as well. Let's talk really quickly. I want to talk about. I wanted to ask you about there are lots of companies out there now that actually are doing this circulating tumor cells. And one of the questions I want you to talk about, if we can talk about it in the layman's type perspective, the way you do your tests and the difference between negative selection and positive selection and why one may be better than the other.
Well, that's not something new. That's very well established knowledge. When dissemination happens, which means few cells are actually detached from the tumors and they are spreading to the blood flow, it's actually a tiny number of cells. So it's a what we call rare event, looking needle in a haystack, literally. So if we try to find these cells, the original idea was um, as long as we're talking about solid tumors, we assume that the vast majority are carcinomas. So, which means that they are coming from a tissue called epithelia. So we assume, at least originally, we assume that they will have epithelial proteins on the surface. So the original idea is that if we manage to use tools to find these proteins on the surface, we could separate the cells and find them. Well, down the road, we realize that the whole process of metastasis is not something which is very simple. They do not detach just by chance. They follow a specific mechanism. So the um, other cells, they are hiding this epitope. They start look like blood origin cells. This is what it's called EMT. And not all circulated tumor cells, they appear this epitope. So practically, if you say that, yeah, I'm going to use the one or the other protein just to fish them up from the circulation, you're going to lose those that they don't have it. And they may be the most important kind of cells. And also, as long as you want these cells, you want to take them out viable, vigorous, and being able to process them. So, which means we need to grow them, we need to analyze them. So we don't need them dead.
Right.
And this makes the thing very, very challenging. So by definition, then the positive selection failed. That was actually the reason why the first attempt of the golden standard method of isolation of CTCs has been failed, gave us really poor outcomes of um, identify these cells. Then it came the idea to what if we subtract the normal cells from a blood sample and leave what actually remains. Actually, this gave us really better results, but it's way more laborious process because at the end you conclude with all the disseminated cells, all the circulated tumor cells, with all the subsets included. And then you have all the population of interest in your hands and you can process them. This is the major difference, which we actually followed at the early stage of developing of these tests. Because we had the same questions as everyone else. How I can be able to isolate them, how I can be able to isolate them viable. Can I grow them? How fast they could grow? Because at the end you conclude with 200s of cells in best case. How you could process and get all the information of them. So by answering one question after the other, this is how all the tests have been developed. So we managed to grow them how long you could grow them so that they will keep the features of the original sampling, so that they will not alter, so that they will give you credible information representing the human body as it was originally. So we figure it out that they can be grown, they can come to exponential phase of growth, but these growth cannot be um, longer than 7 to 9 days, because after that, yes, the cells can be grown, but they are changing their genetic profile and they are not representing the original tumor site.
Mm.
So this is the parameters that we actually knew from the early development of the testing. That's why we consider that these tests as platform, as a set of analytical processes that they are answering all these questions and they provide the relevant information. Then the immediate next question is that, all right, I need to create treatment options for clinicians. How can I provide all this? So the first thing is that, yeah, any drug, no matter if it's conventional or natural products or extracts, they meant to block specific proteins inside the cells. This is it. This is how all medications are working. But proteins cannot be amplified. They cannot be multiplied.
Mhm.
But genes can. This is where we figure it out that the gene expression can give us relatively good profile of what is the actual level of proteins inside the cells. So this is why we include the transcriptomics, as we call it, the whole genome expression profile. But again, there are exceptions of this, because not always the gene expression is in linearity, as we call it, with proteins. So this is where we put the viability assays. We expose the cells to the actual active form of a product, of a drug or a natural product. Because we know that most of the drugs, they are not active as they are. They need to convert, take their active form inside the body, receive a specific concentration amount inside the bloodstream, and then they have to give you the outcome that we expect. And this is exactly what is happening after the growth of the cell. So you have enough cells to do microcolonies, and you could microcultures, actually, to be correct, and then you could expose to these cells, to these substances, and see how effective they
Wow.
work.
How many products and drugs have you guys actually put through that process and tested?
Well, from the conventional quiver, it's approximately 95 medications. From natural products, it's approximately 80 at the time being.
Wow.
But the platform is expandable. It can include other products as well, as long as we know how the substances are supposed to work. What is the actual mechanism of action?
Let me just kind of break down one thing I think is really important to make sure the audience understands. When you were talking about the transcriptomics, one of the other very powerful abilities of this test is to, if someone has a cancer, if they have a breast cancer, they have prostate cancer, the gene expression or transcriptomics gives us a lot of information about what specific genes are upregulated or downregulated that tells us about the potential aggressiveness of the tumor, the potential to metastasize. So if you have a cancer, I'll just use prostate cancer because prostate cancer, I mean, people live with prostate cancer until they are 90, or some people have aggressive prostate cancer and they'll die from it in whatever, 5, 10 years. Um, what I find very helpful here is we can take a lot of that guesswork out looking at some of the transcriptomics and understanding gene expression as to whether this is going to be an aggressive or likely to be an aggressive cancer, more likely to metastasize, or even drug resistance, right? That's another gene. There's other genes on drug resistance. And so I think that there's a lot of pieces here that give you insight into what to do for each individual patient, as opposed to, I think there's a shotgun approach in medicine in general, but every single patient should be treated as an individual. And that's where I think this test allows us to pick the therapy that's best for that individual.
Well, correct. Simply, I didn't want to put that on a higher level, but this is the reality. The transcriptomics allows us to see way above the medications. For example, we know that if specific genes are starting to produce proteins, they may be able to start highly packing your DNA. Well, what that means? That means that the tumor suddenly start becoming very silent. It doesn't produce many proteins. They become very slow growing. Someone may think, oh, this is a good outcome. Well, actually, it isn't. This is the point where the tumor becomes what we call anaplastic. It starts losing features of the original tissue that it comes from. And then it becomes very, very resistant because there are no targets for many medications. These type of cells, they develop several proteins, as you correctly said, of resistance, pumping out all the medications that you can provide to that tumor, to these type of cells. They start hiding targets for many medications simply because the DNA is highly packed. So there are no mRNAs. Essentially, there are no proteins available to be blocked. These type of cells become very self-dependent. They do not interact with the outer environment. So practically, you cannot treat the cancer through the microenvironment. And this is the point where the tumor becomes very, very resistant and essentially aggressive. So this is one piece of information. Another set of genes are may related with the ability of the cancer cells to metastasize. For example, there are specific receptors which, when they start appearing, means expressed the relevant gene. It's the first step of initiation of being able to invade, entering to the bloodstream, and migrate to a distant organ, which means the risk of metastasis is becoming extremely high. So these are the things that we can see through the transcriptomics already. And this actually defines when we should think to start treating more aggressively the tumor, or we start thinking to put physical interventions. We must not forget, cancer is not only treatable with infusions, it can be equally treated by physical interventions, hypothermic ablations, etc.
Right.
Also, there are many ways which you can resensitize that. For instance, yes, methylation is actually one of the mechanism of DNA that makes the cells very resistant and aggressive. On the other hand, there are many nutraceuticals which actually can demethylate your DNA. Actually, you can resensitize your tumor. So it's not always treating the cancer himself. So you can make the cancer more prominent to respond to a therapy. We must also consider that as an option. So transcriptomics can give us a lot of information besides the known targets for medication.
Wow. Wow. And there's a lot to digest here because this is new. This is new for a lot of people, and a lot of people that are listening to this have not been exposed to this. Which leads me to the next question: the type of screening and also this type of plan that's developed with the different products and drugs to target, this cancer, the tumor. When do you think that this is going to become uh, standard protocol, right? As
Wow.
where it becomes main. Yeah, I know it's a loaded question here. Where it becomes mainstream, right? But becomes standard protocol in the world of oncology here in the United States.
Well, For United States, I cannot have an opinion, but I can have an opinion for Europe. Because I was, all of us, we were really thrilled and jumped from joy when officially from the ESMO guidelines, which is pretty much the organ which defines what the oncology physicians should do, um, put on the plan what is called molecular multidisciplinary team for personalized approach. And they gave already a map which defines roles of different physicians and specialties on how we could use genetics, liquid biopsy, molecular techniques, precision medicine, so that we will have literally tailor-made therapy for a single individual. But this is a plan. Until it comes to reality, to average people, I don't believe that it will come short in time. It will take long period because we need to restructure all our healthcare system from the beginning, which means multiple physicians should come in contact, they should exchange information. We need to start interpreting lab results which are coming from genetics or several other laboratories. We should take the diagnostics as we use it in our regular practice, combine all this data, and do reality what is called translational medicine, which is very difficult. So I have to think of very optimistic to that direction, but in reality, I believe it will take time. But at least we acknowledge that this is the way.
Right. Are you seeing oncologists here in the US doing more of your tests or not as much?
Well, as far as I know, because in practicality, we want to think more on the direction of personalized medicine. And as far as I know, in the US, the NCCN guidelines are those who actually define what the medical oncologist or the oncologist should do. And the last years, we have seen that they do include personalized medicine approaches on their protocol, which means that the first steps already taken place. So
Right.
it's a matter of time when they will start implement all these in their practice.
Right.
But as I said, it's not something that happens in a day. Unfortunately, in medicine and especially in oncology, these processes are taking time.
Right. Right.
Can you speak to any clinical data that you have comparing utilizing RGCC testing strategies and treatment strategies to standard of care?
Well, we know we know that many they come out and they say, "Oh, what the sensitivity, what the specificity of a test?" Well, for let's say single parametric test, when you test one parameter, yes, it has a meaning to talk about sensitivity and specificity. But when you're talking about very complex test, the assessment should be more on the clinical side. And that means that in oncology, the clinical parameters that we should think of is, do we see a benefit to the overall survival? Do we see response rate better with one test guided therapy compared to the standard of care? Do we see improve or prolongation of time to relapse when a patient reaches remission? These are the parameters that we should test. And this is exactly what we have done. Recently, it has been published a study in colorectal carcinoma, which we compare the best supportive care on late stage colorectal carcinoma with another group which they follow treatment based um, on the test that we offer. And the study reveals that the best supportive care had an overall survival of 5.8 months, and the group which actually followed the treatment based on the test that we have offered to the physicians actually double the
Wow.
overall survival.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
another one is coming with better outcomes in pancreatic carcinoma. And we continuously challenge, and we always do this kind of test, because at the end, science is science, but we have to treat patients. We need
Right.
clinical data.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. P, you're obviously a very extremely smart individual. And besides being smart, you're very passionate, and I can feel it. And there was one of the things when I was reading about you is that you decided not to take any investors into the RGCC. You decided, I believe it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, you took 85% of your net income and reinvested it into the company to research and everything else. I want to talk about that, because, a lot of the times, especially right now, we have a movement here, Make America Healthy Again. And one of the big things talks about the people that are involved in the medical system and the healthcare system here in the US and how it becomes very corrupt, right? What was your reasoning to not take investors?
Well, for me, I try to stay to the original goal. As I said, I start moving creating RGCC by the motive that first we need to um, create tools for clinicians to make clinical decisions and do personalized medicine reality. But the ultimate goal is to generate more treatment options, which means novel medications against cancer. Not only the few drugs that we have, but to have at least an equal number of medication compared to the type of cancer that exists out there. Well, drug development is a very long and very laborious process, because RGCC is not only about the testing. Actually, this is the front page. The back scene, which is the major work, is actually we use all the real world data from patients derived, which are anonymized, and we find novel druggable targets, which means novel targets to block. And we develop novel chemicals or novel monoclonal antibodies or even advanced therapies against specific targets, which are completely new for several types of cancer. If you want to follow in that course without altering it, there's no other way. Imagine if you put an investor should seek quick profits. This doesn't happen on drug development if you want to stay there. So
Right.
the only solution is to take the hard way. Reinvest your profits back to your research. This is exactly what is happening.
Mm. Right. Right. Right.
Wow. So there's a whole nother level to this, not just the detection, but to come up with the novel therapies based on what you guys see in the genetics and the transcriptome. That's actually,
Correct.
yeah, very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that part was going on. Uh, was that the intention when you set up the company? Was it really to develop novel drugs?
Well, at the beginning, it started like a dream, because drug development requires too many different disciplines to put them under one roof. So you need medicinal chemists, you need biologists, you need mathematicians, you need bioinformaticians, because imagine the human genome is a little bit less than 30,000 genes. Right now, we have data from approximately 109,000 samples, each one of them with 30,000 genes. You need a lot of processing.
Mm.
So you have massive data to process. And then, as long as you find a repeatable pattern for a specific type of cancer on a specific stage with specific conditions, then you have to start thinking, where is this target? Can I create a chemical molecule? Can I use a monoclonal antibody if it's on the surface or it's excreted from the cell? Is there any natural product that I could start working and modify it so that I will create a better blockade to the target? and make it more specific. Because let's not fool ourselves. The vast majority of the drugs that we have right now in oncology, they are what we call ligand-based drug design, which means there is a natural product out there which has the original structure, and we simply modify it, and we create a chemical molecule which is synthetic, and it's an issue of patent. That's it.
Mm. All right.
Very interesting.
Now, Doug, when you talk about this massive amount of data that you guys have to go through, we live in a very digital world where we're using AI, artificial intelligence. Are you guys actively utilizing AI for this massive amount of data?
Well, one of the many reasons why the headquarters and actually the data processing is in Switzerland is because the level of data protection and as well as the utility of AI is extremely high.
Hmm.
So AI can become a very powerful tool, but it requires very good discipline.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that? Well, if you ask bioinformaticians, which they are using AI, for example, of modeling a protein or do big data analysis in order to find repeatable patterns, AI is a very powerful tool with specific limits and rules. If these rules do not exist, you have higher chance to conclude with what is called AI hallucination. So eventually you get a data which doesn't represent reality. And this is critical in pharmaceutical industry. You cannot have the, let's say, the luxury of making mistakes.
Right. Wow.
So yes, the AI is a powerful tool. For example, if you want to just to give you something that the people ignore, when you block a protein to create a novel drug and you discover that, yeah, this protein plays critical role, so it's essential to block it. The next step is how this protein looks like. So we know only the sequence of DNA which is actually encoded. If we do not have what we call crystallography of the protein, we have to construct it. So you have one difficult way, do that in the lab, which will take time, money, and you may not succeed it. Or you can do a modeling. This is where the AI can become helpful. For example, many labs, including here in the US, they are using the AlphaFold version 2, which is a completely AI product.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not all times can give you an accurate structure of the protein and start the drug development. So you need to be very, very disciplined of what data you're going to use.
Wow. Man, there's a lot to this.
You have to, I can't even imagine. How do you know? I mean, this sounds so complex. So you're looking at the protein folding structure, right? And somebody has to be wise enough to know when you say discipline, if the AI comes out with an incorrect protein structure, then you have to have chemists or whoever that was able to realize that. I guess that's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's why the humans will never be outside of the equation, no matter how optimistic we could be.
All right.
So, for example, I've seen that many times happening in my lab in Venezuela. One of my, or actually most of my medicinal chemists, they're really experienced and very smart. So when the software gives a structure, they even by look the protein how it looks like, they could tell you, oh, this is realistic and this could become a druggable target, or this doesn't fit, leave it out for this and this and this reason. So the artificial intelligence can process massive data very fast. What the human mind do is making intuition of it, which AI cannot do that.
Okay.
And this comes with experience. This comes with what the lame people use is gut feeling,
Yeah.
which comes with experience, knowledge, and how you put your knowledge further. So these are the limits of the AI. You cannot use only that or only the other. You have to
Right.
bring the both.
Very interesting. So, Doc, you mentioned earlier that you have about 90 pharmaceuticals, give or take, and then a lot of some of these natural products that you see how they function uh,
Mhm.
against the cells. Have you guys tested? I'm going to go into the world of bioquantum right now. Have you guys tested any frequencies directly with the cells?
Well, actually, there is a group of physicians in the German-speaking countries, which they are working in that field. We are discussing of how it is possible to make a model of it and actually assess this. There are many technical challenges. I have to say that because to put a frequency just to see how it interacts with the cells, it may sound very simplistic, but actually it's not, because the old concept of putting the frequency in the cells are living in a hydrogel, as we call it, because they are growing in 3D culturing. How this frequency interact with the surrounding microenvironment and what is the actual frequency that hits the cells and which part of the cells are interfering, this is the challenging point.
Oh, wow.
And we haven't figured it out precisely because we have to say the truth. There's no perfect laboratory testing. So far, it's the best thing that we can do with the technology means that we have so far. If things will be improved from the technology perspective, we will do steps forward. This is how science is moving, right?
Right.
And yeah, there are limits with frequencies. We cannot replicate so good the efficacy of frequencies in a cellular level.
Wow. How fast do you feel that the science is moving currently with the technologies we have versus about 20 years ago?
Massively. If I can tell you that the first, if I could say, I cannot use the term microfluidic because today it is a microfluidic flow cytometry. At that age, a flow cytometer, it was in the size of a room. It didn't use lasers. It used monochromators, which you use massive cooling system, and the accuracy was by far lower of what we have today.
Wow.
And nowadays, you could have a flow cytometer in the size of a printer in the
Wow.
corner of your desk, and you could do acquisitions
Wow.
on samples. So the
Wow.
technology has moved really ahead, but it depends where the need is. So yes, when we start realize the value of rare events of liquid biopsy of CTCs, yeah, the funds of technology development put in to these kind of technologies. But imagine before that, even speaking about liquid biopsy, you considered as as a charlatan. They
Hmm.
stone you in the central square of the city.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So nowadays, everyone is talking about, oh, liquid biopsy. It's something known. We know that. So this is how science is going. So
Right.
We kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, kind of alluded to it, but I want to give you an opportunity because I want to hear this as well to compare RGCC's evaluation, the say we're talking about the otherwise healthy individuals as a cancer screen, comparing it to some of the other larger name tests out there. Maybe I shouldn't say names, but I want you to compare and contrast, and I want you to be honest about it. I mean, where RGCC may be better and where RGCC may not be better based on some of the other tests that are out there.
well, usually to make a comparison, you need to compare apples with apples. Comparing apple with with oranges is it's not fair and it's not mathematical correct. And to make a comparison, it's not correct simply because the vast majority of the screening tests that exist out there is actually based on circulated tumor DNA detection. Our method is based on detecting alteration on the immune cells on the gene expression level. So it's completely different ways. But from the physiology perspective, the alteration of the immune system takes place earlier than the release of the ctDNA. And this is known in cancer physiology. So practically you can catch up earlier these kind of alterations way before the presence of the tumor compared to the ctDNA. This is the only thing that I can say based on the evidence. All the rest, it would be personal opinion. It wouldn't be fair to.
Right.
And you're not comparing apples to apples. That's a good point. Very good point.
With everything that you guys are doing and developing, looking at this from a financial perspective on what it can do when it comes to the treatments, do you see this actually saving money for people in the long term?
Well, this is a big debate in Europe as well. I don't know if you have heard. I know that HTA doesn't exist even as a term in the US. Recently, actually from the 12th of January this year, all healthcare systems in EU, they're obligated to provide what is called health technology assessment for every treatment available to patients. The reason of this is to find what is the cost clinical benefit ratio, which originally it seems very nice because everyone, we assume that we're going to see the ratio in benefit of the clinical side. Well, actually, it's not. It depends on what the healthcare system of every country decides to do. Are they going to save let's say, the insurance money, or they are intent to save the healthcare level of the population? And we have seen
Mm.
both extremities in Europe.
Really?
For example, in the UK, there is an independent body called NICE, which defines, based on the cost, which kind of medication, even approved medications, to be available to the population. Simply because a cost may not be so comfortable to the healthcare system, to the insurance. On the other hand, based on the legal structure of Germany or Austria, they decide that they should be in the benefit of the population. So the cost comes as a second priority. And this is the reason why we see two different approaches.
Right.
But eventually it shows that because the people actually uses the healthcare, but actually they pay more as a contribution to the insurance, the healthcare coverage, the German healthcare system is on better financial statement compared to the British one, simply because many UK citizens, they seek solutions abroad, which means that they are paying way more seeking solution outside the country.
Wow.
So this is what we see in Europe, and I'm assuming that HTA is coming to, or at least with a different name, but the principle would be the same. We are going to see that happening to many countries. So eventually every country has to decide what is worth to save, the pot of the insurance or the lives of the patients.
I think the answer to that should be pretty easy, though. Right? You would hope,
that should be a pretty straightforward answer, right?
we need to be fair here, because if we put ourselves in the, let's say, the Minister of Health shoes, we have to consider that the resources of every healthcare system, no matter how rich the country is, it's not infinite. You have specific resources and you need to be very wise how to use them. So you cannot spend money here and there for nothing.
Right.
But being wise, of being in favor of, let's say, of an insurance pot are two different things.
Right.
I think the issue here, though, is, and even in Europe, the United States, both, if we were to spend the money on what truly helps people get better, then the incremental cost of insurance would eventually go down. The problem is we don't spend the money on the things that we should spend the money on to truly get people better. And that's my opinion with respect to looking at the underlying root causes of these diseases, or even when you have a test like your test. At the end of the day, think about the number of people that if they get diagnosed with cancer, right? And how many chemotherapeutic regimens are there? And what do they use to choose those regimens? Wouldn't it be much more cost effective if we made a decision based on that individual's expression of specific genes and a therapy that's tailored for them? To me, now I don't waste money spending it on a chemotherapeutic agent that doesn't work, and then I'm going to have to go to the next one and the next one and the next one. It's just sometimes I don't think we think about the technology and the ability to truly look at why people are sick. And we continue. It's easier for us to give drug. I call it band-aid medicine. I mean, it is what it is. If we were to truly look at truly, and we wanted to get people better, if at on the top end we would save money, but we just don't. That's not the way the system's set up.
Well, actually, you're absolutely right. By chance, I'm teaching in a master program of the Medical and Pharmaceutical University in Greece by distance. And I am teaching exactly this. And actually, the statistics reveals that US spends per cancer patient $53,000 compared to the UK, which cost 12,000 US
Wow.
dollars, and compared to Germany, who pays $14,000 for similar treatments.
Wow.
So, and this is the major question: why US spends 4 times more for relatively similar outcomes?
Hmm.
So, I believe there are plenty of parameters. One is what you say, and the second is that the cost of medications is actually higher when you pay royalties, when you import the let's say the patented products in a country. Uh, there are many things behind which they need to be rectified.
Wow.
I had one specific slide which shows the difference, and it's really shocking when you see that.
I always when I always I have a slide that talks about the United States, the amount of money spent per capita. We're number one in the amount of money spent, but somewhere like number 40 with respect to the quality of care that we're receiving in the United States. That just speaks volumes to how we need to change the system and how the costs are set up. If we have that much money to spend, if we were to spend that money in what truly makes, one of the frustrating things for me is I take care of a lot of patients and I do toxin testing and micronutrient testing, none of which are covered by the insurance company. But guess what? At the end of the day, those are the things that are getting my patients better, but it doesn't get covered by the insurance company, right? If we were to spend those dollars on the things that truly are going to help me show my patient why they're sick, then we wouldn't have this healthcare crisis and chronic illness crisis that we have in America today.
At the end of the day, we go back on ancient times, which it's better to prevent instead of treating.
Right.
When
Absolutely.
someone suffers from a severe chronic disease, it's going to be a very hard task to treat them, even to put the disease in a chronic stage, compared to prevent the disease, which, even from cost perspective, it's going to be cheaper and easier.
Right.
So this is, yeah, basic knowledge from known years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I put a lot of emphasis on those three stages: prevention, early detection, and treatment intervention. You want to keep yourself on the prevention side. It's a must. Doc, so what's on your wish list for the future?
Wish list. Hmm.
Where do you want to see this go?
Fulfilling the goal, which means offering more treatment options to cancer patients. That's it. So as long as I can work and breathe, this is it.
How do we get this? How do we get this? How do we get this test more known about in the United States? How do we get other doctors to utilize this test, to be aware of it? I guess one of the things is to do podcasts like this, right? But from my perspective, again, a cardiologist who kind of deals with this is, I still feel weird when I remember 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't talk me into dealing with any cancer patients. But I think the way you guys have put this together, for me, on the prevention end and health and wellness, I didn't have a choice because I felt like I've not seen anything that just kind of gave me the precision to deal with each one of these patients. And I'm not even an oncologist. And it's not to say that we don't need an oncologist. They still need their oncologist, right? Absolutely. But I think that if more doctors were to buy into and understand this type of technology and watch how medicine changes, we could really make an impact on the kind of care that we're delivering. So I would just implore any of the physicians or practitioners that are listening, like, we really need to get this type of information out there to everybody.
Well, that's a very nice wish, which I'm with you. But as I said to the beginning, nothing in medicine changes very fast. So we have to accept that this will take time. More and more physicians to become aware and feel comfortable, because to find a disease or to find the high risk population is one thing. Then the next scary questions from the clinical perspective is what to do next.
Mm.
Many of us, or many of the physicians, they don't know what to do afterwards. It comes a piece of paper which says, yes, you have the risk to develop a malignancy or this type of malignancy. What should I do now? Because then many other issues are arising. If you do not have the disease detectable on a specific size, um, a medical oncologist will not treat or don't
Mhm.
do anything. That's it. So, what it should be done from the other side, from the GPs or from the other physicians, which they are into the preventative side.
Right.
So these are the things that they need to cover and have standardized approach so that we will achieve the wishing goal of literally reversing
Right.
the risk.
Right. Yep. Yep. Wow. This is a lot. This is a lot. This is, I love this because this is the future of medicine. This is the future of medicine. And this is the direction that we need to go in.
Yeah. I always say that, the science is 25 years ahead of the medicine that we practice. And unfortunately, for all of the time that it takes, just like you said, nothing moves fast. And so by the time something like this makes it to our guidelines, we're looking at 20, 25 years for something like that happens. But fortunately, we have the ability to still utilize and help our patients. And that's what I think people should realize, that we don't have to necessarily wait until, I mean, if I can save a life, I'm going to save a life, and I'm not waiting for it to make it to the guidelines, right? I think that the way technology is moving and as fast as it is with the AI, although we do have to check AI, like you said, right? Things are moving so fast that to continue to work in a place where we're following guidelines from 20 years ago, it just doesn't, for me, it doesn't make common sense to me, right? And I've just seen enough in my patients, that and what we do for them, and people who you find prostate cancer before the oncologist. And what he just said was exactly right, right? When you find some of these tests that test positive for circulating tumor cells that are consistent with prostate cancer, but you don't see any prostate cancer and the PSA is normal, guess what? No oncologist, no urologist, nobody's doing anything about it, right? So that's unfortunate. But what RGCC has done is it allows a practitioner like myself, who's not an oncologist, to figure out what the next step is. And so it's just about educating yourself through all their platforms, and you figure out what you do next.
Right. Right. Dr. P, as we start wrapping up here on the interview, if there's one person out there that's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast and resonates with your message, what would you leave them with?
Well, what message is that first, don't give up. The reason why I'm saying this is that I have seen many patients because they are following different paths. They are changing course of action during their journey with this disease or uh, during treatment of this disease. But eventually, they should try all the time. There's no dead ends, or at least they shouldn't uh, let it go. Also, we have to consider that we need to help patients of today as well as the patients of tomorrow.
Right.
So that means that every sample that it's analyzed today, it may generate a solution, a hope, a door for patients of tomorrow. This is it.
Right.
So I believe this is the message that we should take care.
Absolutely. Dr. P, I started working on my third book, and it's called Your Wellness Data. And it's all about the purpose of the book is for people to be able to be empowered by understanding their wellness data in a variety of different wellness data, your wearables like an ring, your Apple Watch, understanding your blood work, your epigenetic testing, doing stuff like VO2 max. But what I would love to have is you be part of that book as well too, and have a chapter on talking about the importance of doing this screening. So that's something that I would love to include into the book. Um, as we wrap up here, where can people find you?
Well, yeah, we do have, let's say, a subsidiary here in the US. Um, Easily, someone can find us through the web, which yeah, our website has all their contact details. Also, we publish a lot. So if someone has a need to search the scientific background, either they could have access to all the peer review articles that we have published around our science and what we are doing in the clinical field by assessing all the technologies, or if someone can go to all these platforms like ResearchGate or PubMed and put my name there, yeah, definitely they will come
I'll
up.
find you. And Dr. Davis, I'll let you close out here by kind of just recapping and letting the listeners and viewers kind of really
Yeah.
take it home.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for everybody listening, this is an incredibly powerful tool that I think. I mean, cancer is a disease that nobody wants to have. All of us dread even thinking about it. But whether we're talking about this as just a screening test, which we've been talking a lot about prevention, it's incredibly helpful. But more important, I think that what Dr. P was just saying about don't give up. I mean, in my opinion, right now, this type of testing and strategy and guidance that they're able to provide far surpasses any type of therapies that in the integrative space, the functional medicine space. There are a lot of people, they vitamin C for cancer or this for cancer or curcumin, and I never wanted to get into that type of, well, we can try this and try this and try this. Trying things really doesn't work for me, and I think that what one of the things that is incredibly impactful here is that we don't have to try things when you have a test that is actually incubating the circulating tumor cells with all these specific agents, and they give you percentages of the effectiveness of these agents. So really, anybody who's suffering from cancer, I think you should consider this RGCC test as a way of giving you a little bit of guidance. Find a practitioner. I'm sure on the website they have a list of practitioners that utilize it in the United States as well as abroad. But give yourself a chance to have make an informed decision about what those therapies could look like. So I just kind of like to end on that. I mean, I would like to say just thank you for coming. This has been a really pleasure for me because, finding this test and starting to utilize it, I've been able to impact a lot of people's lives. And it's with people like you who have the heart to bring this test to the world. And I just hope to get it out to more people to let them know that, okay, cancer is such a disease where everybody just, you want to bury your head or it's the end of the world, but it doesn't have to be. Right. So thank you for
True.
coming.
I have to thank you for giving me this chance to, yeah, expose few data that stays in the lab most of the time to the people. Really.
And Dr. P, us coming together collectively in this industry is allowing a lot of us to live our purpose, right? Because living our purpose, and I speak for myself here, and I know Dr. Davis as well, is being able to help that next person. And as you mentioned, right, it's not about the patients of today, but it's also about the patients of tomorrow. And we think about our kids, our kids' kids in the future, and how we can allow them to live a better, more optimal life when it comes to their health. So I truly appreciate what you've done. I think that this is just the beginning, and us working together with the different relationships that we have, I think we can truly make a huge, huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Guys, you guys heard it. This podcast was definitely much different than what we usually talk about. We talk about the prevention, early detection, treatment, intervention. This is a test that everybody should do, right? Um, we hear family members, friends, they approach us and they get diagnosed with that C word, cancer. Things are changing when it comes to health, wellness, and medical. I want you to further look into this, write us, share this. This is how we're going to truly change the course of medicine. This is how you're truly going to be able to have optimal health. You'll see all the links down below. Guys, we'll see you for the next one. This is how we're going to truly change.